Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a really fascinating journey straight into the esoteric core of one of the world's most enduring traditions. We're going to explore the unwritten rules, the absolute foundation of a timeless ancient order of builders. Now, to be clear, this isn't about modern organizations or recent history. We are looking deeply into an original esoteric teaching that has literally shaped the minds of seekers for generations. So get ready, because we are about to explore the hidden architecture of the mysteries.
Okay, let's kick this off by asking the ultimate question. How does a mysterious esoteric tradition actually survive the centuries, completely unchanged? Think about it for a second. Human nature is constantly shifting. Cultures rise and fall, languages evolve all the time. And yet, this particular ancient order claims a foundation that has remained perfectly intact. How is that even possible without some kind of massive, rigid modern bureaucracy to enforce it?
Well, the answer to that question lies in this incredible concept, the landmark. In the context of this ancient teaching, a landmark isn't a physical monument you can go visit. It's an unwritten law or custom so profoundly ancient that neither history nor human memory can trace who originally created it. The old saying goes, they exist from a time whereof the memory of man runneth not to the contrary. Basically, they are the universal customs of the order, rules of action that have simply always existed.
Section 1. The ancient landmarks, the unchangeable foundation.
So, the absolute defining characteristic of these landmarks is that they are completely untouchable. Even if a universal congress of the order's highest, most enlightened masters were to gather today, they would have absolutely no power to alter, add to, or repeal a single one of these ancient tenets. They're often compared to the laws of the Medes and Persians, meaning they suffer no change. They stand as these permanent bulwarks against human innovation.
And get this, according to the deepest studies of this esoteric tradition, there are exactly 25 of these unwritten landmarks. Just 25. They govern every single aspect of the craft, acting as this invisible yet totally indestructible framework that holds the entire esoteric structure together. It's a brilliant balance, few enough to allow for the progress of human civilization, but solid enough to prevent the order from ever losing its true identity.
Moving right along to Section 2. Mysteries of the Craft, the Esoteric Framework. Now, these ancient rules dictate that the inner workings of the order absolutely must remain esoteric. First off, there are exact, unchangeable modes of recognition among the initiated. Second, absolute secrecy is maintained from the uninitiated, or the profane, as the tradition calls the outside world. To make sure of this, the portals of their meeting places are duly tiled. That basically means they are guarded by a designated sentinel at the door just to keep away any eavesdroppers. And finally, wherever the craft gathers, they're governed by a presiding officer known as a Grand Master, which is a role that actually exists by ancient landmark, not by some modern election. Once you're inside those guarded doors, the structure of the craft is strictly divided into 3 symbolic degrees. This is an incredible journey that represents a seeker moving from absolute darkness toward profound spiritual enlightenment. You start out as the apprentice, where you're learning to purify the mind. Then you advance to the fellow craft, cultivating the intellect. And you finally reach the sublime degree of the master, where you face the ultimate truths of existence. This journey really highlights one of the most beautiful landmarks of all, which is the rule of absolute equality. The teaching explicitly states that once you're inside the order, all worldly rank completely disappears. The monarch, the wealthy merchant, and the humble laborer all meet upon the exact same level. In this esoteric space, virtue and knowledge are literally the only valid currency. But before anyone can cross that threshold to experience this profound equality, they really have to prove themselves worthy. The ancient teaching demands that a candidate possess 2 very distinct types of rigorous qualifications. First, you have the internal qualifications, which relate to the seeker's heart. And second, the external qualifications, which relate to the seeker's vessel, meaning their physical and social existence. Section 3. The internal qualifications, the seeker's heart. The ancient tradition is strict about this. A candidate's motives must be entirely unselfish. You must come of your own free will and accord. You have to be completely uninfluenced by mercenary motives. So, no, you aren't joining to gain some financial advantage, network for your business, or elevate your social status. You have to be prompted solely by a pure, unadulterated love of truth and a genuine desire to be of service to your fellow human beings. Now, what is truly wild about this ancient usage is that it explicitly forbids initiated members from ever persuading, soliciting, or even inviting someone to join the order. It's a fundamental violation of the teaching to just ask someone to become a member. The seeker has to knock on the door entirely of their own volition. The ancient axiom is crystal clear here. The order doesn't seek members, it is meant to be sought by those whose hearts are already prepared.
All right, Section 4, the external qualifications, the seeker's vessel. Historically speaking, the external requirements are categorized into 4 distinct areas. Morally, a candidate must be under the tongue of good report, which is a poetic way of saying they have a sterling reputation. Physically, they must be hale and sound. Intellectually, they've got to possess the capacity to read and comprehend complex symbols. And politically, they historically had to be freeborn. These rigid prerequisites were designed by the ancients to make absolutely sure the candidate had the moral standing, the intellectual horsepower, and the complete social liberty to fully engage with the mysteries without any external pressure. To understand this on a deeper level, we have to look back at the operative traditions of ancient temple builders. Historically, the order requires candidates to be mature men without physical mutilation or defect. Now, why is that? Well, because in their esoteric symbolism, the candidate is a stone being prepared for a divine temple. Just as the ancients would never, ever use a fractured or blemished stone for a sacred altar, the symbolic teaching requires a perfect vessel for this incredibly profound spiritual work. Ultimately, though, the absolute foundational requirement is a belief in a supreme, superintending power known esoterically as the Grand Architect of the universe. This ancient order is entirely non-denominational. It absolutely does not dictate how you worship. However, an avowed atheist cannot be initiated. The entire structure of the teaching relies on the concept of a divine creator. Without that foundational belief, the symbols and the rituals would just be completely meaningless to the candidate. And this requirement reveals how the ancient order perfectly adapts to literally any culture across the globe. A landmark requires that every gathering place has to contain a book of the law to serve as a spiritual trestle board, basically a blueprint for moral conduct. But here is the absolute genius of it. This book can be any volume that the local seekers believe contains the revealed will of the Grand Architect. It completely transcends specific religions while honoring the universal search for divine truth.
Which brings us to Section 5, the spiritual temple, the ultimate revelation. So here is the grand secret of the whole shebang. This entire framework is beautifully symbolic. They are transitioning from operative building to speculative building. They aren't out there constructing a material edifice out of stone and mortar. Instead, they're taking the physical tools of ancient stonemasons, things like the square, the compass, the plumb line, and using them as psychological and spiritual instruments to shape their own moral character. They are literally building a spiritual temple of the mind. This entire journey through the degrees, governed by those 25 unchangeable laws, is specifically designed to teach some profoundly deep philosophical truths. It all centers around this really powerful, dramatic legend of a master builder who sacrifices everything for his integrity. It directs the seeker toward the search for ultimate divine truth, and it implicitly teaches a profound belief in the immortality of the soul, a resurrection to a future life beyond this physical vessel. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I want to leave you with a question. If you were tasked with building a spiritual temple out of your own mind, what would be your foundation? What unwritten landmarks, what unbreakable rules of integrity and truth guide your personal journey? Think about your own internal qualifications today, and whatever you do, never stop building. Thanks for hanging out with us.